It's a big day over here for many reasons. First off, we are talking audiobooks, and I am delighted to share that I'm launching an audiobook in alignment with this season of the podcast. I've been working diligently with my guest today, Phil Bright, to bring Make Your Author Impact to life in the audiobook format, and it's out there ready for listening ears. As Phil and I worked together on this effort, I took notes and wanted to bring you a season on all things audiobooks. Today, we're diving into the pros and cons of an audiobook to help you determine if an audiobook makes sense for you, your book, your message, and your listeners and readers. Ready to listen in? Let's go. Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and I help authors make their author impact. Marketing can be overwhelming and immobilizing for many authors, but I'm determined to invite you to trade overwhelm for empowerment. I believe that empowered people empower people, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies and tactics to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and here's the kicker, will buy it. But marketing movement for movement's sake just won't work. That's where strategy comes in and what I'm determined to share with you. I'm the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of multiple books myself, including a book that is perfect for authors called Make Your Author Impact. Sell more books, increase your reach, and achieve your why. I have been called to merge my love for reading books, writing books, and marketing books to help nonfiction authors with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. Think of this podcast as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, done that, and understands exactly where you are. Because guess what? I have, and I do. So get your pens ready because I'm ready to empower you. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. Before we pressed record, there's nothing like kicking off a season on audiobooks and not having my audio set up. So I'm giggling because before this episode, Phil and I were chatting and I was sharing some insights about my microphone and my headset, only to realize I'm on the phone with a audio expert who was able to coach me through some of my audio problems. So I'm so excited, Phil, that you're here. I've had the ability to get to know you personally outside of audiobook production, which is what we're launching this season of the Empowered Author Podcast on. But personally, as somebody who also played guitar and taught my son how to do it. Anyways, I just know, I love you. I love everything about you. I love the passion that you have for audio and for music and for communicating a message in a way people can understand and hear. And so when I said, hey, let's do a season on audiobooks, I was crossing my fingers you would say yes. So Phil, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
It is fun. It is fun.
Yeah, you're great to work with.
Oh, and every time we come together is fun.
Even though your energy is just so intense, but
in the audiobook world, I mean, you spend a lot of time with somebody, and after a couple of hours, I always know Phil would look at me and go, I'm done, Stephanie. No more energy.
oh no, I usually last a little longer than a couple of hours, but that thing of recording and reading along and trying to catch all the mistakes is, that's some work.
It's crazy. And
it's mind-numbing.
It is mind-numbing. And I can imagine, like, at some points, it's lovely because there's some monotony to the work. On the other side, you've got to get, like, some creativity and you've got to step out and breathe and get outside of the studio and out of the padded room. I remember taking a photo while we were recording it going, I never thought I would enjoy a padded room so much. But it was...
Yeah, you just need a straitjacket to go with it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I learned a lot in the recording of the audiobook version of Make Your Author Impact. And I am excited because it's a marketing strategy for authors. So this whole season, we are digging deep, Phil and I, on all things audiobooks. And before we go any farther, though, Phil, it would be awesome for you to share with listeners a little bit about your background, because you're not just an audiobook dude.
No.
You have so many layers, and every time I chat with you, I learn more. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this.
Well, I took piano lessons when I was 6 or 7, and started playing guitar when I was 10. And once I discovered guitar, the piano went completely out the window. You realize what your thing is, and guitar was my thing. And, played
Yeah.
music. I'm completely self taught. Played guitar now for 45 years. Yeah, I'm that
You're
old.
giving away your age, Phil.
Yeah,
Don't tell
yeah.
anybody.
But I've always played music. I've always played in bands. I've had various bands. And I started recording probably in around 2000, I'm thinking. And, you just start with some kind of little self-contained recorder and one microphone, and something cheap, whatever you can afford at the time, and then you
Mhm.
realize it's not quite adequate for what you're looking to do. I had real high expectations, but my gear was well below that. Not that gear's everything, but it definitely does make things a lot easier. And
Oh yeah.
so,
Yeah.
just a constant, researching and making decisions about what to buy is a huge thing. Just figuring that out. What is the best thing to get you what you're looking for, what you're wanting to hear. And, I compose music. I've had many writing projects, and the whole composition aspect is another part that I love. And, it's one thing about doing audiobooks that people will want music for. Man, that adds a whole new level of excitement to me. I mean, doing audiobooks is fine, but
Mhm.
man, writing music for them, especially the whole process of communicating with the author what they're looking for. Sometimes authors have ideas, and maybe they don't know how to communicate what they're wanting, and figuring that out is always a lot of fun. I enjoy that. But yeah, I've been recording forever.
In your home office, which is it nestled under the ground in your basement in a soundproof space in the
In the
cave, the
cave.
man cave. You've
Yep.
had authors around the country come, or not just authors, but musicians around the country come record music down there. You feel it when you
Hmm.
walk in the space. It's awesome. It's just got such a cool vibe, and it is really, it's really an experience. It was for me an experience. I know a lot of audiobook authors record out of their home, and I think you're really missing an opportunity for a lot of things. And we'll talk throughout the season about the quality of audio and such that comes with it. But there is something beautiful, not just about the quality that you get when you go into a studio like yours, but the experience that you get of
Hmm.
really elevating your book, setting aside your life and focusing on the thing that matters at this moment, and that is the complexity and beauty and simplicity and purity of the communicative word audibly.
Hmm.
And you mentioned something about your background in music. I do think that's one of your secret sauces, Phil. And I'm excited to share. I've been
Hmm.
holding this super close. For those listeners of the Empowered Author podcast, you probably noticed some new music today. That music, Phil created. And we're not talking just, oh, Phil got on some,
Hmm.
digital design tool and did it. No, he created it from scratch. Oh my gosh, I cried, didn't I? Didn't I cry the
Yeah.
first time you shared it with
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It just came from the kind of the vibe that I got about the book as a whole, and maybe we talked. I can't remember if we talked about any particular piece of music that was important to you, or if you had a certain idea about a feel, but
Yeah.
I don't recall how that came about
I feel like I
off the top of my
shared with
head.
you a little bit of, well, again, we have to go backwards. You knew me before. So you knew
Yeah,
the
yeah.
energy that I brought. You knew kind of the positive focus of life that I have, the kind of upbeat kind of energy and drive. But I just remember sharing with you that at the heart of what I do with authors, I want them to feel like anything is possible. And I want them to
Hmm.
feel like, I know this is a trek and it's not easy. Anything with marketing a book is not easy, but
Oh no.
I want you to feel like you can do it. And then, I come to the studio the next time to do the next recording, and he goes, "Hey, I've just been I've just been fiddling on this. And then you shared it. And I'm like, Phil, this is amazing. He's like, it's not done. I got to do this and this and this. I'm like, no, you're done. And he's like, no, just trust me. And
Mm-hmm.
I cried. I listened to it almost every day for like 2 weeks just to remind me. It was very uplifting to me. So I'm honored that you created that beautiful piece specifically for me. And now it is integrated into the podcast. It's a part of my new audiobook and everything in between. Phil, you are so talented. So talented.
Well, it don't happen that way every time, because there are times I'm still trying to get a feel for what the author wants and what the book needs, and sometimes you miss it, sometimes you don't. But
Give yourself
I'm not
grace.
hitting it out of the park every time. But I try.
Mr. Humble. I don't agree. I mean, I've heard many of the music elements that you created and they're all spot on, but I just love it because, for on our brand designer, our graphic designer on our team, she talks about how her job is to get into the minds of understanding the nuances of a target reader and a target client. Like she is the visual design of a logo is so much more than that, and I can trust her in that. And then we've got all of these other collaborators and they're experts in their field, but when I think of you and how much you love and understand the spoken,
Mm-hmm.
the audio elements, it's beautiful to watch, Phil, and it is
Oh, thank you.
an art. You are phenomenal, and that's why I'm just honored that my audiobook got to be a collaborative effort with you, and excited that you're here so that we can impart, oh my gosh, 6 episodes of wisdom. Are you ready to dive in? We have lots to talk about today.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with a question I get asked regularly, and that's, should my book become an audiobook? And some authors dive in and do it before they ask the question, and then if they haven't methodically thought through the book doesn't sell the way they want. Or others probably should have done it and haven't because they're stressed out by the next step. So I wanted to just share a little bit at a high level about why I chose to do my third book in an audiobook. And then I figured, Phil, we'll dive deep into the benefits and the pros and cons of an audiobook, if it's a good fit and things to consider. But I want to share with y'all, this is I've got 4 books out now, but my third book, Make Your Author Impact, is my first business book. And I chose, actually, before that, Phil, you and I talked about doing my first book in audiobook.
Yeah.
You even created some lovely music for that. And I was like immobilized with that initially, like not the music, but with like taking that step. And I realize now why. And that's because I was wanting to do the first book as an audiobook because I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And thought it would be an amazing value add to the book series. But when the third book came out, I called you. I said, hands down, done. We have to do this in audiobook because I know unequivocally. I'm laughing, Phil, because there's always
That's a hard word,
a
ain't it?
word that people say funny
That you can't
that you
pronounce.
can't pronounce. I know hands down. We'll do
Yeah.
that one. I know hands down that busy authors and authorpreneurs consume information audibly. This podcast is living proof of it. And I knew that the business book needed to come to life in this way. So before we dive in, I really want you to consider, if you are questioning if your book should become an audiobook, consider who your target reader is and how they consume information. Do they consume information in an audio format? Like, are you noticing in your books that your ebook is getting more downloads than purchases than your paperback? Might be interesting, might be telling you something, because right now I do believe ebooks can be read to you, but not with music and inflection or anything fun in between. I only know this because I have a dear friend who is blind.
Yeah.
And when my first book came out, she asked me, I was doing an audiobook. And when I said, I don't know, she shared with me that an ebook has that potential, but it's not at the level of what an audiobook can provide. And so if your target audience, target readers will consume it in the audible form, and it can be a pipeline to more work you do, more book sales, a greater reach, which could pay for the investment of the development, then I say yes. If that's questionable, I say, let's do some more research, because what I don't want authors to do is to go down rabbit holes of shiny objects, Phil, and land in the sea of no return. And
Oh, yeah. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
but I think audiobooks are becoming more and more and more relevant. I think more and more people are doing it. And, I share all this and then put the caveat. I actually did some research this weekend, Phil, which is why I go, oh my gosh, we might be doing another one sooner rather than later, because I found that actually memoir storytelling books are some of the biggest audiobooks. And I'm like, oh no, I thought we were just doing this one. I have two others that,
Oh,
that
wow.
might be good for that. So what do you think? Would you have anything to add on that, on from your perspective of some authors that have come through your studio, on what you if you think a book should become an audiobook?
Yes. There's a lot of people. Like I have a good friend of mine that's a musician that, believe it or not, he gets tired of listening to music. And when he works all day long, he works at Ford and he listens to
Mm,
audiobooks all day long. And there are
yeah.
particular types
Yep.
of audiobooks that he likes. And that helps the
Hmm.
day go by. There are people that work looking at a computer screen all day long and literally can't stand the eye strain of looking
Hmm.
at a book and actually reading. To me, that makes it a really good option. And then you have people that are driving long distances to,
Yep.
on their commute, find it more interesting to listen to audiobook than to listen to music or whatever. Just makes the time go by in a more pleasant way.
I
So,
agree, and I also think it is, in our chaotic world of 1,000 messages every second being sent our way. I personally struggle with quiet time. Like, I don't know what to do with it, Phil. This is probably the high strung nature of
hmm.
Stephanie. You might over there go, I love my quiet time.
Oh, yeah.
But like,
Oh, yeah. Thinking of nothing. That's what I like.
thinking of that, I don't know what that's like. I'm jealous. I
Yeah.
want to know what that's
Hmm.
like. But what I find, even when I'm like getting ready in the morning, I get really irritated if I can't be productive with my time. And yet I can't
Yep.
have a book open all the time. But I could do an audiobook, and that would be something I could listen while I'm, like you said, while I'm driving, while
Hmm.
I'm doing some monotonous tasks, while I'm getting ready, while I'm going down the road and the kids are crazy in the back seat. Like, there's a lot of benefits to audiobooks, and we want to discuss and kind of break it apart into the benefit from the listener standpoint and from the author standpoint. um, Phil, you've highlighted a few of these kind of cornerstone points from the listener standpoint, but convenience is one of them, right? Like, you don't
Sure.
have to be holding open the book and getting irritated
Yes.
because the book wants to close on you, or you're going to lose your spot or something like that,
Hmm.
right? You can listen anywhere that you're
We
going.
need spiral bound.
Yeah.
Don't you do your book in a spiral bound?
Dude, they don't do print on
Come on
demand
now.
solutions in spiral bound. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah,
That's ridiculous,
man.
but it is
At least
convenient.
that'll hold it open for you.
It would. They make things now, Phil. I've actually considered investing in some where they're like paper weights for books. And that way the book holds open when you're reading it. That's important for me while
Oh,
I'm blow
wow.
drying my hair and reading a book. Like, that's how it works.
Oh,
I know
wow.
it's crazy.
That's funny.
But it's convenient, and it allows us also to kind of in this multitasking world, right? Like, so maybe you enjoy, like, at night while you're cooking, maybe you invest in professional development, or when you're working out, or like you said with your friend who works in the factory experience and career. When you're doing something monotonous, your brain can consume other information. And, uh, the
Hmm.
more that we can invest in ourselves personally and professionally, the greater we can grow. And so an audiobook could do something like
Hmm.
that. Well, I've also noted too that we appreciate storytelling, and people listen and remember in stories. If you give somebody 100 facts, you're not going to remember them. But if you give them 3 stories and those facts are paired in them, they will. And audiobooks can help with that. It can help with comprehension. I actually, in some research, identified this point I thought was interesting. It says listening to audiobooks can improve your comprehension and retention of information because it engages
Sure.
multiple senses and helps you to visualize the story or information. So not only are you like professionally growing in what you learn, but the listener is getting improved comprehension. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, Phil, the more I want more of that. Please, please give me more of it.
Well, I've always kind of had a little bit of an issue with reading
Mm,
comprehension, just reading. I'd read sentences more than once to make sure I'm getting it, especially if it's technical information or what have you. But now my computer will read for me, and I definitely absorb it easier. when I'm hearing it than sometimes when I'm reading it.
Well, and that's a good example of accessibility, right? Because everybody learns differently. That's why in the school system, you have 4 or 5 different ways that teachers will teach because it's how people are learning. And
Hmm.
so audiobooks offer another form of accessibility. And like I said, my friend who is blind and couldn't read my first book would easily be able to embrace this one and kind of dive into it. It's also a cost effective. Now, I'm going to say this through the lens of the listener. It's a cost-effective alternative to print books because if you get a subscription service, you can borrow them from the libraries, etc. It's more cost-effective for the listener to absorb more books. There's a friend that I follow, Phil, and she, no joke, like every month, like listens to and reads 100 books. It's insane, something crazy. And one day I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
I thought I read a lot because in the work that I do, I read a lot of books every month, and I realized it's the
Hmm.
audiobooks. She's listening to audiobooks everywhere she goes because she has an audiobook subscription.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Wow.
So there's a lot of benefits on when we think as an author, we should always think about our readers, our target audience. They're pivotal in the system. But from the author's standpoint, there's also valuable purposes too, right? So it's also convenient for us.
Sure.
And it's also, a way for us to reach kind of new listeners. From your perspective, Phil, what are some of the benefits you see from the person doing the recording and how an audiobook could be helpful for them? Why do you think an author, or what value do you think an author has just on having the audiobook as the end result? Like, I'm thinking some of what we talked about, like that your friend of yours who listens to audiobooks all day. Well, the book could open the door for them to reach that person. That person may never have read the book in the
Sure.
first
Sure.
place.
It definitely reaches people that wouldn't be capable of reading it otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's
Yeah.
I would venture to say it's probably new people, right? And so I've found in my world,
Hmm.
you either consume information this way or you don't. And if you do, you are really exclusive. And if you don't, you're probably exclusive that way too, right? Like there's some overlap, but it's very
Sure.
kind of divided and not in a bad way. But I think when we only limit our message to one way of sharing, we're limiting ourselves. There's an author that I'm working with currently who one of her target audiences is a very busy human, like very, very busy. They're in the medical field. They have
Hmm.
very little margin for anything outside of their work and their sleep life. And I shared with her this feedback that, hey, like if we really want to get in front of your target audience, we need to get it in a way that they're going to consume it, right? And so from the author's standpoint, if you know that your target reader is hearing information and prefers it that way, it could do that, or it could give you the competitive advantage. There's a partner, a friend of ours that we both know, Phil, that recorded her audiobook with you. And recently I was chatting with her and she made a comment that she just sees the audiobook sales coming in. They just keep coming in. And I'm like, awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
good.
I think it is a competitive advantage. I think it really like gives us a step up when we go out and other people are looking for information, especially where the genres and audiobooks are popular, and it's additional money, additional revenue stream. And let me tell you, authors need that. Now there's some downfalls to that. I mean, you know, it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
all ice cream,
Yeah.
cupcakes, rainbows, and butterflies, right? I mean, Phil, what are some, from your perspective? No, nothing in life is, right? Didn't they
Oh,
say like
nothing is.
anything good
No, nothing is.
in life has like a cost to it, like whether not just financial, but a cost, like you have to give to get
Sure. Whether it's time or
time or money, both of which are
whatever.
downfalls in the audiobook space. It takes time. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I have been working on mine for a while.
Yeah. I'm kind of afraid to look and see how many hours we did put in that thing.
I know, right? I know. Well, like so let's use my book as an example. So my book was like what, 60,000 give or take words. I mean, I was in the studio recording several days. I think at least 3 or 4, and those days were probably close to 6 to 7 hours. I mean, they were long days. It's a lot of
It's a
time.
grind.
It's a grind.
It's
Yeah.
a grind.
Yeah, and because of
Yeah.
that, like there would be days. You remember the day that I came in and I was like, my voice is kind of funky, and so I was noticing the things I was drinking. My voice needed to be like
Hmm.
prime. So like warm or extra cold wasn't good for what to be drinking. I needed lukewarm or
Or room temperature water is usually pretty good. Hmm.
Exactly. And so, if you want to do an audiobook, you have to set aside the time to do it. Now, if you don't, if you personally are doing the narration, right? If not, somebody else, you can pay an actor to do that. And we'll talk later in the season on if that makes sense for you or not. But I venture to say that many of the books that I see out from nonfiction space are spoken by the author.
Oh yeah,
You don't get very many that aren't. Do
I
you
haven't
feel?
had one yet. So far, all
Yeah.
authors have read their
Yeah.
book. Some of them didn't
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah. Well, that's true, right? And that is a self-editing selected option that we as authors struggle. And so I want you to think about that
Yeah.
actually. I mean, that's an important thing because you want to find the right narrator for your book. And sometimes you are the right one, and sometimes you are not. And that is hard because we
Yes.
get really close to our message and we think that everybody needs to hear us, but there are problems in how we communicate sometimes that makes it hard for listeners. And so the end goal is for the listener, your reader, to consume your information. And if you have something that is distracting in your voice, like, I mean, Phil, I even my accent, remember what was the word for me that I kept thinking that I kept messing up? Oh, it was something silly. And finally I said, to heck with it, I'm saying it.
I mean, there wasn't
There
many.
wasn't many, but there was
There
one.
weren't that many.
There was one, and I started to like try to over articulate it, and then finally I said, "Screw it, we're not." I'm embracing the Southern.
Like, how would you say it if you were just talking to somebody? That's how you have to look at it usually.
Exactly.
And yeah, you
Exactly.
can't overthink
Exactly.
certain words.
Important. It was the word important, Phil.
Important.
Important. Important. Important.
Yes.
And I was trying
You
to.
can't say it so Walt
I
Disney.
know. Important. I needed to say it how I would, but I can imagine if you have a really strong accent, one way or another, that doesn't align with your message, that it could be challenging for people to hear and to understand and comprehend. And that could be a reason why maybe you might not be the right narrator, or you might not have the right inflection, right, Phil? Like if it's just monotone, I don't know that that helps move the story forward
It
either.
depends on what the content of the book is, but that whole
Right.
thing of comma, like where a comma is, raise your voice, like something else is
Yes.
coming, and then period. If you get those two things
Yes.
backwards, oh, it's so awkward sounding. And a lot of times when you're reading yourself, you don't realize. I mean, when I'm playing my guitar, sometimes I can't hear it like a listener would hear it. When you're talking, you don't hear it the way a listener would hear it.
Exactly.
And when you're reading your own book, you don't hear it that way. So I try to
Mhm.
give a little bit of reflection on that when
Mhm.
somebody's reading and point out some things that they're doing that they
Yeah.
don't realize they're doing. And it might make it difficult for people to understand where they're going if the inflection is wrong.
Yeah, and I think that is it requires you to also have a thick skin as the author if you do choose to do the narration. Not that not that you are berating.
The word
You're
Nazi
not,
or
no, no,
anything.
no, but I think many times we are so close to our message and we're so close to what we want that, and I say this from like the editing side of my own book. I'm like, I don't want to hear the bad. Like, don't tell me the bad. But I also know that at the end of the day, it just makes it better. And so if you're going to do the narration of the audiobook, like get some thick skin and know that if you have an audio producer like you over there helping us, listen. There were a couple times during the recording and you were like, now,
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, there is a comma in there. You've ended that sentence. It's a
Mm-hmm.
question. It sounds like a statement. I'm like, thank you for noticing
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't. And when I
Mm-hmm.
go back and listen, I'm going to notice and want to come back in and re-edit. And it's always harder. Separate from writing the book where it's easier to edit, the audio book is easier, in my opinion, to get it right the first time while you're doing it than to come in and try to make sure that you've
Yes.
put a new sentence in that's in the right audio levels and everything in between. You want to make sure that you're the right fit for it, and if not, you find somebody, and that you set aside the time to do it and not space it over time, right, Phil? Like we did the majority of the recording in a couple week time chunk. Would that be how you would recommend it?
Mm-hmm. The least amount of time in between sessions, the better. Because over time, especially if you live in Louisville, everybody has allergies. The tone of your voice will change from day to day. The amount that you're hydrated changes from day to day. There's so many variables that if it goes too long, especially if we need to fix a sentence,
Yeah.
Getting it to sound like we didn't fix that sentence is almost impossible if it's been too long. I mean, your voice does change through different times of the year. The amount of pollen or the amount of sinus drainage, and there's so many factors in how your voice sounds. To me, it's gonna make it where all the chapters sound very similar
Yeah.
if they're done as close as possible. If you wait months, who knows what's going to happen,
Who knows? You might have to redo the whole thing and
Yeah.
it becomes more costly. I'm giggling because as we went through in the review, I texted Phil one day and said, look at the audio at this one timestamp. What is that weird noise? And
It's
he's
like a
like,
little
I don't
gurgle in your
know.
throat or something.
No, it was my stomach. I was growling.
Oh,
Do you
that's
remember that?
right. Yeah.
It sounded like a ghost. And I'm
Yep.
like, how did that happen? So we did have to record a new sentence and plop it in. And it ended up being fine, but it was it's just proof of the nuance and challenge that it had I said, time out, Phil, I need to go get a chip or something to not be so hungry.
Put something in my stomach
Maybe.
to give it something to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was funny. We should have collected all those bloopers. But that also takes me to kind of a third or a final kind of downfall to consider outside of the fact that producing an audiobook the right way is costly, and that doesn't mean it's a bad cost, but it's an investment. So make sure that
Hmm.
you are aware of that investment, but especially because quality matters. Quality matters. And if you have poor quality at the beginning, it could actually negatively impact how people experience in your book, tell people about your book, etc. It's inevitable. I know readers who have told me, "Oh, well, I'm not sure I like this book. I can't get past the first chapter. The narration is horrific, or I hear horrible echoes and all this stuff." So, quality here
Or
is,
mouth noise.
oh my gosh, mouth
That
noise.
friend of mine told me he has totally bailed on some audiobooks because of the mouth noise.
Yeah, when you can hear like the clicking in the
Spit
back,
in your mouth. Yeah.
but we don't want
Ugh.
that.
Yeah.
That is so.
Yeah, and
it
there
is
are things you can
annoying.
do. I know we can talk about that later, but
Yeah.
there are things you can do to kind of minimize that. But
Yes. I found actually for me that the thing that helped with that is I would always try to push the words to the tip of my mouth. So like I wouldn't,
yes,
when I was talking, I would be very intentional of pulling the words to the tip so that the back of my mouth remained more open. That was something that I don't know if that's legit, Phil, but that's what I was doing in
hmm
your padded studio to try to
well,
mitigate it.
I've heard other book actors say that they try not to put like words that have a L. Try not to put your entire tongue on the roof of your mouth. Try to just put the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Because when
Ah,
you pull it off, it's going to make a pop noise. I mean, everybody has some amount of pop noise, and I try to minimize that based on the microphone position, but there's still going to be some. I do have a really good set of
yeah.
audio repair software that will declick. I declick, and that helps.
Yeah, you do. You declicked mine.
Yeah,
You declicked mine, didn't you?
yeah,
I said, go declick it.
mm-hmm,
Go get that, any of my little blop out of it.
yeah,
Well, and listen, this is proof of why I tell everyone if you're going to do it, this is something you have to do right. Like I tell authors if they're self publishing, make sure you have an editor and you have a professional cover designer. Those two are pivotal because, people do judge a book by its cover. When it comes to an audiobook, please, please, please don't try to do it at home. And don't try to do it by yourself. Even in uploading it to Audible, you and I experienced, even the professional, it's like, oh, well, they're very, very finicky on certain elements. So do not
mm-hmm.
do it alone. You need high production quality and value, or it could negatively impact your brand.
Oh, sure.
So should you create an audiobook? Well, here's my answer, Phil. I think it depends. It depends. It depends on if your target audience consumes information this way. Maybe do it. If you have access to high quality production like Phil, or you're willing to come to the Louisville, Kentucky area, I know Phil and I would be happy and I'd love to introduce you to Phil and have him do it in his studio. But you might have high production quality opportunities in your area. That's fine. If so, possibly. Do you have like a reason to do it? Like, Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for something else? Like, is this a strong lead magnet where using your book could get more business? Then possibly. Do you have the investment means of time and money? Then possibly. So it all depends.
Hmm.
I don't see this as a yes or no. I think it's a in between. I think it's a gray on it depends. However, I sure did love the experience, and I probably will be doing more of them,
Oh,
Phil.
great.
You're stuck with me.
Good. I love it. It's great. You know, one kind of book I've never done is like a fiction book that has varying characters, where you have to get voice actors to do the different voices.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be really interesting.
be.
It'd be time consuming, but it'd be
It would
interesting.
be interesting.
To
It
do.
almost would be an audible movie.
Yeah.
Like you would,
Yeah.
outside of having, some of those audiobooks where the narrator changes their voice. I always giggle at that, like between
Mhm.
the characters. It would be
Mhm.
really cool to have that. That's awesome. Well, maybe we'll have one. Whoever's listening, maybe you want one. Phil's ready.
Well, that's kind of the way I approach the music anyway. Because you take music out of a movie, and what do you have? That's where a lot of the emotion and that's setting the feel of the movie comes from, is the music. And so I try to do the same thing for a book, you know.
Yeah, it really does. Well, you do a fantastic bang up job, friend. And
Oh, thank
I
you.
am so
Thank you.
excited to have gotten to do it with you, but I'm also excited to share your expertise and insights through this whole season. So stick around for the subsequent episodes. We'll be talking about things like audio specific, like the how-tos of getting it into the audiobook process, really ensuring that you have an audio experience that is in alignment. What does it take to actually produce the audiobook? What are some things to expect, what you didn't know you needed to know, and some of the details about distribution and marketing. So I am pumped. Phil, thanks for being on today. And
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
we'll continue the chat.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Audiobooks take time, resources, and energy to create, no matter how you create them. For some authors, it's the perfect fit for their target reader. For others, it may not be the best use of efforts. It all, depends. Understanding the pros and cons for the listeners and you, the author, will help you make a more solid, strategic decision. And you know what I think about strategic decisions. They are methodical movements forward with purpose and impact. Author friend, thanks for listening today and for rolling up your sleeves to becoming not just any author, but an empowered author who is determined to create a legacy, change lives, and make your author impact. If you found this podcast episode and podcast as a whole helpful, we would love it if you would take a moment to rate and review it. As you know, I'm a believer that empowered people empower people. I have empowered you. Now it's your turn. Go out there and empower others.